guys, welcome back, and hello if you are new, I hope. So, as I've kind of mentioned previously, there's a lot of releases that are coming out in September, and they are still coming. Thankfully, we're almost near the end of September, so there won't be too many. Well, I say thankfully, I love having such amazing albums to listen to. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that in this video, I'm going to be putting together multiple albums again, which kind of came out over the last couple of weeks that I might have missed because I was in New York and all that sort of stuff. So first off, I'm going to be talking about Clutch and their brand new album, Sunrise on Slaughter Beach. So if you're not familiar with Clutch, they are a band which are a four-piece from Germantown in Maryland, USA, which kind of combine elements of stoner rock, blues, and psychedelia. They're characterized in very kind of straightforward, I think, songwriting, and also Neil Fallon's inimitable sort of tongue-in-cheek lyrics. And as much as they have that straightforward attitude, they are incredibly tight and all brilliant musicians at their respective crafts. The band have released 13 studio albums and started in 1991, meaning that they are actually as old as me. So about the record, Neil Fallon is very much still on absolute form here and proves that he is one of the most versatile singers, I think, in rock. The actual title track, Slaughter Beach, echoes that idea of the blues, but I think has a really kind of something you can latch onto a lot quicker than some of other Clutch albums. There's definitely kind of a darker feel on this record. Mountain of Bone, I think, really brings that psychedelic element to the forefront, particularly in the guitar and the bass playing. There's also kind of like a weird surf rock kind of vibe on Skeletons on Mars, which has the use of theremin. It has that sort of like slight, I don't know, 50s sci-fi kind of vibe going on, but again, also very psychedelic. Though I have to say, I think a highlight is Mercy Brown, which has very sort of like solemn licks to it, and brings more of a contemplative approach to the band's sound. And in a way, sort of made me think of Ghost Town by The Specials. I know that sounds really, really weird, but that was the first kind of song that sort of popped into my head. But I like the fact that this is the band kind of doing something a little bit different for me personally. But of course, Clutch always burn the brightest, I think, in their straightforward rockers. And, you know, Red Alert, Boss Metal Zone, and We Strive for Excellence are two great examples of that on this album. It's very much a Clutch album through and through, with a little bit of experiments here and there, but chances are if you are a fan of the band, you will definitely enjoy this record. Next up, I'm going to be talking about Phobophilic and their brand new album, Enveloping Absurdity. Phobophilic are an extremely promising young band who have just been signed to Prosthetic Records, and this is their debut release. This is, you know, like the first album they've made. And I think they combine elements of new school and old school death metal. Sonically, I reckon this band kind of sound like a combination of Asphyx, bit of Bolt Thrower maybe, and then latter era death, particularly where like the themes are concerned. And you could even argue some, you know, like contemporaries of like Blood Incantation, I think would be not too far removed from what this band's sound is like. Thematically, the record discusses the idea of existentialism and particularly has a focus on French existentialism. So death metal is very much, I think, at the forefront of this band's sound, but there are elements of more of a progressive identity at play here as well. Nauseating Despair has those kind of, I like to call them like mastodon hanging chords that happen quite a lot. It's also very atmospheric as a listen. You know, there's a really great song called Individuation, which kind of reminds me of, you know, being straight out of A Nightmare on Elm Street and harks back to sort of like Fabio Frizzi, kind of John Carpenter kind of vibes. So especially if you're a fan of horror, you'll really kind of, I think, find a lot of joy in that particular song, but also the album itself. Personally, I think what really sets them apart from the pack is the interesting guitar work and also the drum work. You know, there's some really great guitar solos happening on here. The drums are really interesting throughout as well. And it's just something different, I think, you know, where death metal can, not to say being oversaturated, but I think there's a lot of bands which can sound quite similar. So, and I have to say, Given this is a debut album, this is absolutely incredible work from this band. And I think, the future is incredibly bright for these guys. And, to be able to deliver an album of this caliber as your first record, you're onto something very, very, very special. So don't miss this. Next up, we move to Portugal in the form of Gaerea and their brand new album, Mirage. So Gaerea are a band that are from Portugal and focus on black metal, but very much kind of bring a sense of pained emotion, I think, to their sound, and really focus on the dynamics to deliver something that is quite different from, traditional black metal and their contemporaries. So far, the band have released 2 studio albums and an EP, so Mirage is the 3rd album of theirs. So the themes of this record look at the idea of the inability to trust what our senses are actually telling us, and also an inwards looking at the idea of isolation. The record was also produced by Miguel Terezo, who traditionally does not work with black metal bands, so I think that kind of added a little bit of a sense of difference to this album and where it might have kind of gone. And with that in mind, the production is very, very clear and allows for those sort of change in dynamics, whether it's the addition of more cymbals, or maybe a slight sort of change in guitar lead, or adding some sort of layer. You can really hear everything that's going on, and it kind of adds to the overall piece really, really nicely. So I think the production was really quite important in just understanding how great this record is. Most of the songs on this album are quite long, and I think that they are more well thought out than they have been previously on Limbo, which was a great album, but I think, they kind of basically, Gaerea have just tightened everything up that they started to kind of showcase. Like where guitars are concerned, you'll have like one guitar, which is almost like the anchor with the riff. And then the other guitar will kind of like slowly add melodies and then add maybe a harmony or something like that. And that's what kind of pushes the tension of the song forward. There are definitely progressive and kind of cinematic elements, particularly on the album opener, Memoir. But then there's kind of like a post-rock sort of vibe on the title track, which is Mirage, which I thought was quite cool and also quite unexpected. And it's not just kind of like relentless blast beats, which I think is important. Ebb has this kind of quite elasticated kind of riff, but then Salve is also very, very fast. But it doesn't stay like that, for the entirety of the song, and particularly the album, because otherwise I just think it just gets a little bit too one-dimensional. On the whole, this release I think is more immediate, more memorable than perhaps Limbo. And in terms of black metal, I think, Gaerea really kind of making a case for themselves, being one of these new kind of breeds that, are really doing something different in the genre. So if you've not heard of this band before, they are kind of like a combination of Queensryche meets Van Halen with a seriously heavy dose of heavy metal. The band feature members from Eternal Champion and Innumerable Forms, and even have Arthur Rizk at the helm. The record is 35 minutes long, so it doesn't really overstay its welcome. It's a classic sort of side A, side B, then you're done kind of vibe. Melodies are definitely the strongest point of Sumerlands, and you've got examples of that on Twilight Points the Way and the actual title track of the album, Dreamkiller, which is one of my favourites. It's such a great, great melody that they've got. And the riffs, both in guitar, but also I think vocal riffs, are really, really cool. Some of the range that, this guy is able to hold is just incredible. And it never sort of detracts from the guitar or, kind of takes too much center stage. It's always exactly what the song needs, I think. Overall, it's an incredibly 80s feel, and you can hear that, from the guitar tone, but also I think from synthesizers, which, especially in Night Ride, I think that song really kind of like shot me back into like Whitesnake 80s era, particularly with those synthesizers. Most of all though, I think the riffs just make you want to go kind of like, fuck yeah. And Edge of the Knife is a great example of that. And Force of a Storm as well. These songs are just absolutely brilliant. And I like the fact that there's only 8 tracks. They kind of come in, they do their thing, and then off they go. There's no kind of like fat on this record. If you wanted a great homage to the 80s this year, then I don't think you could find anything better than Sumerlands' Dreamkiller. Phobophilic wins. So I hope you guys enjoyed these album roundups. I love doing these. They're really, really fun, and I get to kind of shed a little bit light on more artists rather than just the one. So let me know what you guys have been listening to this month, as I would really, really love to hear. And there's so much stuff in September. But anyway, let me know what you think in the comments section below, and I'll see you guys very, very soon for another album review.